Shalom, friends.
Shalom.
We are going to start telling you about our beginning. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're outside. We took a walk today. It's warming up a little bit. The sun's out. It was raining. And you'll see that I'm wearing a t-shirt. And Theresa has a sweater and a jacket on.
And 2 shirts on.
Because we both, although we both grew up in the north, we have been living in the south for 10 years.
10 years?
10 years. And I won't lie, I'm a little bit acclimated to this nice warm weather, but Theresa is very much acclimated to the nice warm weather. And if it's 70 degrees, that's cold to Theresa. All right, so I had written a short note on our Facebook page, really short, talking a little bit about where we began. And I can't start that story without saying that I got married in my early 20s. And I have no ill will or hard feelings toward my first wife. I have no doubt that we would both agree that getting married was a mistake for us. She wasn't a terrible person. We just weren't two people who were meant to be together. And I don't know much about her life now, but at the time, I would certainly say that in light of the faith that I hold in Yahweh God, in Yeshua, our Savior, my desire to serve and honor God with my life, we were not equally yoked. And I don't want to say anything negative about anybody else, but I do feel like it's important for me to say that I was faithful to my marriage relationship and that I was purposeful to be faithful in my marriage relationship in my mind and be faithful in my marriage relationship even when it was broken, to be faithful emotionally. So I just want to say that as I tell you how we began. So my first wife had left me, and I spent a lot of time at churches. I spent a lot of time in Bible studies, and one of the Bible studies that I went to was a young adult Bible study, and my lovely wife Theresa went to that Bible study, and we met there. I was really very purposeful not to be paying attention to any girls, any young women, and I didn't. And I didn't pay attention to Theresa. Without getting into too much, I'll just have to say that, and I'm not talking about staring at her or anything like that, but just her presence really caught my attention. And that was really surprising to me because I very much wanted to be faithful. I very much wanted for my marriage at the time to be reconciled with my wife, and for that to continue. And I didn't have any interest in anybody else. I was chasing after God. I had good support around me between my family and my church, and I was lonely in that, my marriage relationship was broken. I was estranged from my wife, but I certainly wasn't seeking attention. And yet, on a subconscious or a spiritual level, Theresa caught my attention, and I was pretty mindful of that. In fact, I tried hard to avoid her. I didn't want to be around her. But it was sort of a strange paradox because we had mutual friends, and we would run into each other sometimes, and I'd have somebody call me up and ask me if I wanted to go out and do something, and I would ask who was going to be there, and I had reasons for that. I wanted to find out if Theresa was going to be there, and I had such a conflicted emotional response to that. I was like, oh great, Theresa's going to be there, and darn it, why does Theresa have to be there? It was kind of how I felt at the same time. In fact, this group that we were going to, people were coming from towns all around that church, and it was certainly not a guarantee that Theresa would live in the same relatively small town I lived in. When I found out that she did, and just a few miles away from where I owned my home, that was really irritating to me. But anyhow, we spent some time together. Theresa's a very good air hockey player. I might be the only person she knows who's a better air hockey player. And I wasn't going to share this, but it's a funny story. And I want to. Theresa used to. After the Bible study, they had a little game room, game area, and we'd go play. And I don't remember exactly, but I kind of feel like I didn't rush up there. I'd linger around chatting with people, and Teresa'd be up there playing air hockey, and I'd get up there and watch her play. And I remember one time in particular, she was playing against some young guy. And look, Theresa was, she is, but she was a very attractive young woman. And I personally think that any of the guys there that weren't attached would like to have been attached to Theresa. And so, they had all their charm going, they thought. Anyway, this young guy, he told Theresa, "Don't worry, I'm going to take it easy on you." And Theresa said to him, "Why don't you tell them what you said to him?"
Oh, well,
Come on, tell them.
especially I think when I was younger, I was probably a bit more sassy, and
You were sassy, yeah.
Yeah, so
Quite a bit of bravado. Come on, tell us.
So, I just say, well, don't take it easy on me because I don't want to have an excuse when I beat you because I fully intended on beating him.
Yeah, so Theresa, I actually think I tell that story better than you because you said
you're
to him.
A better
Well, no, because
storyteller.
I put your sass in there. You're trying to make it a little too nice. So Theresa said, "Don't take it easy on me because I don't want you to have an excuse when I beat you." And she had the head bob and everything going. And I was just smiling. Now, he really didn't think that was going to happen. So she's just smoking a couple of shots by him. And he's just got sweat coming down his forehead. He's feeling kind of nervous. He's got a sweatshirt on or something. He takes that off, gets down to the t-shirt because he's really got to get serious. And she just crushed him. When I say she crushed him, she didn't just crush him in the game. She crushed him. That guy, when all of his pride was just in his shoes. She just mashed him down. And I had already said that I got next. And I knew that what that meant was I got to play her next because she beat everybody. And he walked away with his head down, shaking his head at me. "Man, she's good." And I said, "Yeah, don't worry, I know." Anyway, we did on 3 separate occasions that I can remember spend a little time with each other outside of seeing each other at those group settings. One time, you actually called me up to invite me to a family picnic, and where you lived by your sister and your brother, and I just hung out with their family, and we took a walk with the neighbors' kids through the creek, and I always want to say we didn't hold hands, we didn't stare into each other's eyes, and we didn't even touch each other. It was very platonic. Okay. I also asked her one time before I knew she was going to church on a Wednesday if she wanted to stop and get ice cream. That's another funny story. When I asked you if you wanted to get ice cream, what did you tell me?
I said, "That's swell."
That'd be swell, and I was laughing at her. She couldn't believe it that I was laughing at her. I said, "You said swell." Who says that? She never said swell again. And then, what was the other time we spent some time together? We took a walk in the park. Kind of between my house and your house with my dog. So that time we actually spent time alone. Again, no holding hands or anything. We just talked. But what really struck me at that point, now at that point, I had been, married. My wife had left me. We had gotten back together again, and she left again. And it really was heavy on my heart after that last time that Theresa and I had spent time together that I enjoyed her company. I wasn't thinking thoughts about her. I don't know, some people might find that really hard to believe, but I had gotten to a place in my walk with Christ where I was very disciplined in my mind, and I wasn't this guy driving down the street staring at every girl who wasn't wearing enough clothes. It's just not what I did. And I wasn't thinking about anything like that. I just really liked being near her. And I understood that was not being faithful to my relationship with my wife. I say relationship, I didn't have a relationship, but I had made a marriage covenant. I had made a commitment to her. And I understood that I needed to honor that, and that spending any time with Theresa and enjoying it was not honoring that covenant. And so, around that same time, you were having similar feelings, right?
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me.
Yeah. I felt like, I knew that in order to like really honor God, that I needed to stop spending time with you because, you know, even though we were just hanging out, like, I don't know, it was still, I mean, I think like I understood that there was an attraction there, and even though you're going through being divorced and all that, that technically you're still married. So I knew that I needed to stop spending time with you.
So I think at least for a week I didn't go to that same Bible study, maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it was after one of those Bible study nights, and I kind of had an idea when she'd be home. I called and asked her if I could come over and talk with her. And I stopped over the house where she was living with her family, and she met me out in the driveway. And I was honestly, I felt guilty because I felt like I hadn't thought about being attracted to her. I know that it's really hard for me to even explain that, but I couldn't think that way in my mind, and I didn't. I just, on an emotional level, I felt I really liked to be near her, and I felt that I could feel that she had an attraction toward me. She was in a different place, you know. She didn't have this broken marriage relationship, and she's trying to reconcile what her role is in that, how she's supposed to handle that. So she could maybe think about being attracted, and I knew that she had some interest in me. I could feel that, and I felt really guilty that I had kind of strung her along because, and I wasn't doing that on purpose, but I felt like that's what I was doing, and if I kept going, that's certainly what I would be doing. And also around that same time as I was feeling that, I got a call from a friend of my ex-wife saying that she wanted to get together again. So this is, just to put a little timeline on it, she left me like in February. We got together in June. That was a disaster. And then she wanted to get together again. I believe it was in September. And so from June to September was the short little time that Theresa and I had seen each other, played air hockey together. She did beat me occasionally. Not too often.
Not too often.
And those 3 times that we spent a little bit of time together, and I was starting to feel really guilty about that. She was too. And then about that time, I had gotten this, what I look at as a second opportunity to try to work things out with my ex-wife. Now, inevitably, they didn't work out. And I had a lot of people I knew at that time telling me, well, God hates divorce. Keep praying, and it's, you know, she's going to come back to you and things are going to work out. And I struggled with believing that. For a little while, I kind of did. Ultimately, I know that that wasn't the whole truth, see, because people have free will. You know, they get to choose what they want to do. And I could do everything right, which I know I didn't, but it didn't even matter if I did everything right. She still had her choice, and I couldn't change her will. And that God isn't going to change our will either, you know. So I was really surprised that I got that call, and I remember talking with my father about it. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to try to get back together with her. And my dad shared some really beautiful wisdom with me at that point. He said, look, I don't know how you can forgive her at this point. And again, I'm not trying to say terrible things. I'm really not. On what level exactly, I don't even know. And I have my suspicions. I have my ideas. I don't need to get into it. But there was unfaithfulness while we were married, and that was not on my part. And I was struggling with that. And some things that happened that, you know, at the time it was a terribly difficult emotional experience for me. And trying to figure out, do I even want to try to have a relationship with her again? And my dad said to me, he said, look, I don't know if you can forgive her. I don't know how you can forgive her, but I do know that if you want to forgive, that's something God will help you do. And that was really what kind of pushed me toward calling back. And the first time we had gotten together, I feel like I gave her too many ultimatums. I guarded my heart. I wasn't open enough with her. I didn't risk enough. And so the second time around, I really do feel like God is a God of second chances, and the second chance he was giving me was to really lay my broken heart bare again and risk it all, knowing that there was a good chance that I'd get hurt, not only again, but worse than the first time. So this is all what's going on with me, and I called Theresa up, we met, and I told her, thinking she was going to get angry with me. In fact, maybe that she might smack me or something. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't have experience with somebody as sweet and nice as you. And I told her, I said, I am married no matter how bad things are in my relationship, and I've got to put everything I have into trying to reconcile my relationship, and I've got to tell you goodbye. And you surprised me with your response. And what exactly did you say to me?
Well,
No, maybe not exactly.
Yeah, not exactly.
It was a long time ago.
Well, that it was on my heart to do the same, so we said goodbye.
Yeah, Theresa told me that she had been feeling that God had put it on her heart that she needed to not be hanging out with a married man, whether I was going through a divorce or not. And I really needed to keep my heart open to the possibility that there could be reconciliation, and unless and or until that day came where there was no longer the chance for reconciliation, I couldn't be emotionally connected to somebody else. That needed to be the end of that. So we said goodbye. That was the only time we'd ever hugged. We hugged goodbye, and I know this for certain from myself. I never expected to see Theresa again. Now, I liked going to this young adult Bible study that we're going to, but I stopped going there because, partly because I felt like, well, Theresa, I think she knew more people there than I knew, and she had certainly been going there longer than I was going there. And I felt that if the responsibility was on anybody to stop going, it was mine. And so I wasn't going to go there anymore. And I didn't. I didn't go there anymore. And I embarked upon my last attempt to try to reconcile with my ex-wife, and things changed for you a little bit at that time. Talk about that a bit.
Well, I started dating another guy.
You didn't do a lot of dating.
No, I didn't date almost most of my young life.
Yeah.
So I happened to be at that time. I don't know.
Okay, so you were dating a little bit. I think we'll end this video here with maybe a little suspense. The conversation we had at my house. We'll get there. And then, so you were dating this guy, and he moved.
Yeah.
Went into the service. It's okay to say that. And how were you feeling about your relationship at that point?
Well, I was conflicted.
You were conflicted. And what was your conflict?
Well,
I mean, in terms of how you felt about, his faith, your faith.
yeah, well,
that's what I mean.
Well, we weren't. I knew that, he wasn't as sincere about serving God. That seemed pretty evident to me. And I didn't know if I wanted to do a long distance relationship, and so I guess I felt like I wasn't attached, and
so after I got together again for the second time with my ex-wife, it ended badly, but I have to say, I'm so grateful for the second opportunity, because one thing I'm certain of, I mean, I had people that I really trusted, their wisdom, cautioning me about being really putting it all on the line, but I knew that's what I needed to do. And I don't know how well I did it. Okay, I don't claim to be perfect, but I do know this to the best of my ability. As much as I was capable of at that time, I gave her everything I had. I gave that chance to reconcile that relationship everything I had. And it was worse than her leaving the first time. It was worse than her calling it quits the second time. It was, the third time was crushing. And I had really sort of held myself together pretty well. I still had our wedding picture hanging up in the dining room, and lots of stuff in the house. In fact, I just finished renovating our bathroom, and I painted it purple because that was her favorite color. And I was hanging on to this hope that she would come back. And after that third time, I gathered up everything that I had in the house that reminded me of her at all, anything she might possibly want. I knew she probably didn't want, but I didn't want it anymore. I threw it all in the back of my truck, and I drove over to the apartment she had, and I called her up and I said, I don't need you to come back. I don't necessarily even want to talk to you, but if you want any of this stuff, it's going to be in front of your door. Come get it. And if you don't want it, get rid of it. And I just had lost it. I'd really lost control. And I drove away from there, and this is one of the things I think is, I learned something that night. I'll say this, there are things that we do in life that at a certain time in our life, they're sin for us. But if we had done them before, maybe they weren't, because of ignorance. And I literally shook my fist at God as I drove away that night, broken. And I told God, don't you see how bad I hurt? Don't you care? I'm not effing Job. I swore at God and shook my fist at him. Now I got to tell you, I'm not shaking my fist at God right now. I'm just kind of reliving it. I would not speak to God that way. I would not shake my fist at God. I believe absolutely that would be a sin for me today, and I wouldn't do it. But what God, God is big enough. He's strong enough that nothing that we can say to him out of anger or fear or sadness, sorrow, shocks him. And I tell you what, in that moment, even though I was very immature in my faith at that point, and really just going through my maturation process, going through a fire that would temper my faith, and really for more than any other reason, prove to me that my faith was genuine and make my faith stronger. I expected God to, I don't know, have a semi come out of nowhere and crush me, maybe. I realized even in that immature moment that that was not a good thing to do, to swear at God and shake your fist at him. But, I never saw God's face, but inside, in my mind, in my heart, I could imagine seeing him. And I could hear him. I used to help lead a youth group, and one of the students at one point said something that was so beautiful. She said, when God speaks to you, it's just the same as when a person speaks to you, except God skips the audio. The way that our mind processes and we understand is the same. And God spoke to me with such a gentle voice, and he said, honestly, I didn't even expect it, but it makes me emotional thinking about it. Totally healed from that experience of my first marriage and my divorce, but just thinking about the way God loved me. And he just said, yeah, I know how bad you hurt. I know how bad you hurt, and I do care. And immediately he told me what to do. It was a friend who he and his wife I had been spending time with. They were helping to counsel me through this difficult time. And he said to call this man. And I called him up. And he right away said, where are you? I'll meet you. And we met at a restaurant. I got in his van and we were talking. And it was at that time he said to me, I've watched you be willing to go through more than I've ever seen anybody be willing to go through to try to save their marriage. He said, but you need to understand that you're not Superman. There's a limit to what you can go through. And he said something, he was always a very blunt person. He always said very frankly he said, look, you can take a snowball and you can take it on top of a snowy hill and push it. Do you really need to watch it all the way to the bottom to see what was going to happen? And I wanted to tell him he was wrong. See, at that point I understood that my ex-wife's will was to leave me, and that inevitably that was what was going to happen. But it was hard for me to come to grips with that I couldn't stop that I couldn't change that. I'm certainly glad I learned that lesson, that I don't have to control over other people's will. And of course people do that all the time. They try to manipulate and play games and try to control people. And then and they might be able to do so for a while, but ultimately you lose control. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, but all I could do was tell him he was stupid. I said, man, you're stupid. But he could handle that. And so I really just went through the process of really heading toward that divorce, all the legal stuff involved in that. At the same time, I realized I needed to just leave a little bit of space for there to be reconciliation. It didn't seem like that was going to happen, and as the process went along, it seemed less and less likely, but I knew that I needed to stay open to that possibility that God could get a hold of her heart, that she would have a change of heart, that she would want to reconcile with me, and I needed to be open to that. Around December, really getting close to the Christmas holiday, I think it was, I felt free to go back to the Bible study that Theresa and I had kind of got to know each other going to, and talk to her again. And what did we do? We went caroling at always in group settings, went caroling at a nursing home. We didn't spend time together alone in the way that we did in the past, but Gosh, it might have only been one time that we sat in your car and talked before you went home. And maybe that was that nursing home day because it was so late. Like, we all left from the church, went to the nursing home, I think, and then came back. Like, you drove with me, and then I dropped you back off to pick up your car. I think that's how it went. Probably was only one time. Honestly, that one time, though, feels like it might have been a bunch of times, but I don't think it could have been. I don't think it was. But we did talk with each other. We'd kind of linger after the group event and chat. And same thing. I mean, it was very platonic. I mean, we were just talking. We'd talk and pray together is what we did. Never touched each other's hands, or we certainly weren't kissing or anything like that. There was none of that stuff going on. But what was it? You called me up and you wanted to talk to me. Why don't you tell that? Because that's how it happened. The conversation in my dining room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you called me.
I did. I forgot
So
about
yeah,
that.
you forgot about it. Well, remember it. This one's going to be a little longer, but I think it's worth it. The end of this story is where we'll stop for now.
I called Aaron and I left him a voicemail telling him that I needed to talk to him.
The tone made me think, oh no, what's this about?
And so I saw him probably later that day.
I think so, yeah. We didn't delay. We talked about it after
Yeah.
work or whatever.
And so I was dating this other guy, and like I said, like, I didn't feel like, you know, I wasn't married to him or anything, and he was out of state and stuff, so I was going to see him soon, and I was trying to figure out, like, if we should continue to be a couple or not. And so I wanted to talk to Aaron about it because I felt like I would put that to the side if there was a chance for Aaron and I to be together, I guess.
Right, so this was a really strange time for me because I understood. I had a sales job for a little while, and I can be a little persuasive. I mean, I wasn't some dirty, sneaky salesman. I sold good stuff that people wanted, and they came to me. So, but I just know that I can be persuasive. I can make a good argument, and I had this fear that I would convince Theresa that she should do something that was against not necessarily what she wanted to do, not being able to give her any answer. And so when she was really, I don't remember exactly what she said, but she was not asking me directly. She was being very indirect. She was not trying to ask me flat out, do you want me to have a boyfriend? And she kept trying to get me to answer that question without flat out asking it. And I had my poker face all on. I mean, I was giving her nothing. And she was frustrated with me. Because I did not want to tell her that if I had my choice, I wanted her to be open to the possibility that my marriage did end, and that if that happened, we could get together, but understanding I made this commitment, and if she has a change of heart, I've got to be obedient to God and joyfully surrender to, rebuilding my broken marriage. How do you ask somebody to do that? I didn't want to ask her to do that. And I'm feeling like it was like 2 or 3 times she really tried to get at my answer from a different angle, and I stopped her. I didn't let her even ask that, get any kind of a clue from me what I felt. Mm-hmm. And I remember her exasperated, and she kind of put her head back and said, "Look, do you want me to have a boyfriend or not?" Right? Something like that, wasn't it?
I'm sure it was.
Man, she was like, I was like, I don't think I think even then I didn't give you much. I just kind of looked at you blankly, and I'm struggling inside to figure out how in the world do I answer this without answering it. And I realized I couldn't, and I just told her, I said, essentially what I just said, and that's that I have to keep my heart open to the possibility that my wife could want to end the divorce proceedings, try to work things out, and I needed to honor that commitment 100%. And that would mean, just like before, if that was to take place, even though at this point it looked like, a 99.9% certainty that we were going to end in divorce. I mean, our court date was set, and all the things that transpired up until that point. It was a near certainty, but it hadn't happened. And it was when I say leave a sliver of hope, it was really just a little sliver. But I needed to be open to that, and I knew that, and I felt like it wasn't fair to expect Theresa to wait for me. The other thing I felt in that conversation was, as she was talking about this other guy, it seemed plain to me that he wasn't genuinely following Christ. He wasn't genuinely interested in serving Yahweh God. Maybe he had some interest in the beginning, I don't know, but ultimately, and I think this happens in relationships, people will act as though they have similar feelings. I think that's often true with faith, for the sake of being in good with the other person. It's not necessarily genuine. It's not necessarily their actual personal desire, but they're kind of share that desire as far as they can bring themselves to, for the sake of having that connection with the other person. And it seemed plain to me that that was the case, and I really wanted to tell her, I don't think this guy really has genuine faith in Christ, and that the faith that he's portrayed was really just for your benefit. And I don't want to tell her that. I don't want to try to convince her of that. I wanted her to make her own choice. And if I was, perfectly fine with the idea of her waiting to see what would happen with me, but I wanted that to be her choice, knowing that there's no guarantees. And, so we kind of left it at that. She was going to go and see him a long ways away from where we were both living at that time, up in New York. She was going to go somewhere else and see him, and I had no idea what she was going to do. I don't think she knew what she was going to do at that point.
I don't think I did. I don't know.
But I just, I guess I had to answer the question and tell her that if I got what I wanted, it would be that maybe she wouldn't have a boyfriend. But I can't tell her what's going to happen. I don't know. So that's where we'll leave it for now. This one's a bit long, but I think that's okay. You got anything to add to that?
Well, I would just say that saying goodbye to one another, it was very difficult to do, but it was something that it was needed to be done in order to just honor God. But that was something that ended up being a huge stepping stone in our relationship together. Seeing how.
Yes, I agree, because I think probably in the little post I put on Facebook, I said something along these lines. We certainly know that God needs to be the one on the throne in our hearts. I mean, He needs to be the one held in the highest honor. We can't let somebody else, ourselves or our significant other or anybody else, be more important to us than God is. And it's pretty hard to know if that's true for somebody else. If you're with somebody, what is the most important thing to them? And I think one thing that we never really questioned about the other was, who were we committed to first and foremost? And I have no problem saying that my first commitment is to Christ, not to Theresa. And what makes our relationship so special, is that we share that commitment. We have a shared commitment that individually, personally, we're committed to Christ first and foremost. And then secondly, we're committed to one another. And I think that our commitment to one another is stronger because our first commitment is to Christ. And in saying goodbye to each other, I didn't want to do it. I liked Theresa. She was my favorite person to spend time with. Spending time with her was, even though all we did was chat a little bit, a few times, it was really meaningful. And not having that opportunity ever again was not an easy thing to do, but the choice was easy, right? It's not like the choice was hard. We knew that's what we needed to do, and we just did it. So we'll continue that story and share some other things soon. In the meantime, shalom, friends.
Shalom, friends.